Hello, my name is Nicole Sandifer, and I am a licensed marriage family therapist and the lead mental health clinician for Ojai Unified School District. Today, we're going to be talking about mental health awareness, specifically how to identify warning signs, as well as interventions to help support your child. Working as a therapist in the district, I've picked up on a few different issues that seem to be the most recurrent in my therapy sessions, as well as conversations with staff, administration, teachers, etc. So when looking at some specific topics to address, social relationships, anxiety, and depression were the top three. So when looking at social relationships, we're going to look at how to support your child and connect them with other youth with some interventions to help with that. Anxiety, we're going to give an explanation of what anxiety is, warning signs and triggers. Depression, we're also going to look for warning signs and some support and tools to use within the home. And then lastly, we're going to look at warning signs and knowing when to ask for help. So why are social relationships so important? When looking at social relationships, we know that they teach kids cooperation, loyalty and support, coping with challenges, independent thinking and opening up to ideas, understanding and expressing their own emotions, empathy, trust, making well thought out decisions, and accepting responsibility. Kids learn from other kids, right? Those social dynamics that they have. Many of our disruptions, the routines that we had, because of the pandemic, were canceled. So interactions with peers at school, walking down the hallway, team sports, all of those were put on pause. And so those social relationships were also put on pause. When looking at teenagers, especially when they are biologically primed to seek independence from their families, COVID-19 again stopped that. So we're looking at why these social relations were so important and also how to get them connect with their peers again. For some, anxiety and depression were maybe prevalent or there when before the pandemic, but maybe exacerbated now. The next slide we're looking at is being lonely versus being alone. So we know that, when someone is saying, I'm lonely, right? What does that usually mean? So a lot of the times when we ask a kid a little bit further of what that means for them, it could be like, I'm bored or I have nothing to do. So they might not really feel alone necessarily, but they might just need an activity, something else to kind of do, either play a game with someone or connect with someone by having a conversation. Being lonely is described as being an emotional state where you're feeling alone or disconnected from others, even when they're right there next to you. So you could have everyone around you and have those social connections, but feel isolated at the same time. Being alone is a physical state where you're physically by yourself. You're just alone. The lack of social interaction that we had during the pandemic really created a domino effect on children across the world. So the isolation piece increased, right? And so some were resilient enough to be able to connect with others through social media, or maybe the neighborhood friends were allowed to kind of see each other from a distance, but others were really stuck at home and missed out on a lot of those opportunities. When we're looking at the pandemic, this is all new to us, right? We've never had to experience a pandemic before. This is new for our kids, new for adults. So we're going to look at how to help in terms of connecting your students with their peers. These are some helpful interventions that we had addressed. And first and foremost, I want to say that always checking in with your child, asking them how they're feeling, and remind them that you're there to talk when they're ready. Some children or adolescents may need more time to express their feelings. Some might do better with gradual conversations and other activities besides talking. So painting, drawing, as a means to express themselves and manage their stress. Others might benefit just from direct conversation. But when we're looking at this slide here, I always encourage parents to use open-ended questions. So what are some of the biggest challenges right now? What have been some of the biggest changes in your friendships? So really opening up that dialogue of like, what's different, what's new, what would you have liked to have gone back to? What do you hope to look forward to? Not just, did you play with your friends today? That's a yes or no, right? Try to keep it more open-ended. We're also going to highlight the positive qualities about your child and their friends. So we obviously know that we want to instill confidence and strength building for our own children. And we want to identify their strengths as a means to improve their self-esteem and confidence, right? But you also want to highlight their peers too. You want to be able to say, I really liked how Jack was, opened the door for me, or I really liked how I noticed that Jack was sharing those Legos with you. So you really want to highlight to your child the strength that you see in that peer as a mean to discuss those positive qualities that you admire yourself. And so that's instilling a discussion about values, and again, those positive qualities. You also want to talk to your child about the value of honesty. So this is across the board. You really want them to identify what makes a good friend. That could be at the elementary level, the middle school, and even the high school. And you want to encourage them to find friends who they can trust and are honest. I think that, there's a lot of focus on social media and online friendships. Can we really trust that those people are who they say they are? And then those in-person friendships, we really want to make sure that they're connected to a friend, and again, share those same values that we talked about, with the qualities that you want to instill in them. And then you also want to support socialization. So for an active child, that might be play dates at the park. If your child is more enjoys quality time, then you want to encourage them maybe to invite a friend to lunch. And so during our online training, we really had a good discussion about how teenagers can have like a lunch date with their friend, or going to Starbucks and getting a coffee. And it really makes them feel, like a young adult and responsible, but also connecting with their friend on a different level outside of school. Again, I know it could be awkward to, connect with those parents of students at school, but, I encourage you to arrange those play dates and let your child explore their world outside of school. So in the training, we kind of provided a check-in, but as you are viewing this from home, I just want you to kind of check in with, does it resonate with what you're seeing? And so every few slides, we're going to have this this check-in, because I really want you to think about your own child, how their social relationships are. Do you feel like they're, connecting again with peers? Do you feel like they're a little bit disconnected? But again, just kind of check in. So what is anxiety? Anxiety is specifically defined as a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. Anxiety is our body's normal reaction to perceived danger or important events. It's an internal alarm system, right? So it alerts us to danger. It helps our body to prepare to deal with it. It allows you to jump out of the way of a speeding car. It also lets you know when something important is happening and helps us perform at our best. So for example, your student might have increased anxiety, but motivates them to make sure they study for their test or bring home their textbooks. Anxiety is something that everybody experiences from time to time. When we look at how anxiety can manifest in children and adolescents, it presents itself in many ways. So it could be extreme worrying or feelings of fear, increased crying or difficulty managing their emotions, rapid heart rate, sweaty palms, shaky hands, and then somatic complaints. So if your student is constantly complaining of an upset stomach or a headache, or when they're at school and they said, my head hurts, my stomach hurts, I can't, can't stay here, or I don't want to go to school, I'm afraid, your child may have anxiety. But also remember that normal anxiety can become a problem when the symptoms don't go away and they start to interfere with the rest of your life. So we all have normal anxiety, but if it continues on, and especially with these side effects right here, you definitely want to maybe explore some further support. Understanding our triggers. So we have the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response. I'll go into the fawn response in a bit, but I'm sure most of you are familiar with fight, flight, or freeze. This is the automatic response our thoughts, body, and behaviors react to. So when you're faced with a potential threat, your thoughts focus on the danger. Your body revs up to help protect you, and then you take action, fight, flight, or freeze. So the example I use, I share that if you're walking on Shelf Road here in Ojai, right, and a skunk pops out of you, right? So what are you going to do? You think, well, what if it sprays us? and it helps you identify that potential danger. Your body also reacts, so it has like a physical reaction. So your heart might beat faster, your muscles might tense up, and it helps you get prepared to protect yourself. You take action. So you might be very still, or hoping that the skunk doesn't notice you, right? So you freeze, or you run away, you flight. As you can see, anxiety can protect you. It actually really is a survival instinct. There's also the fawn response. So the fawn response is something that they believed for a long time was more just about personality, like that codependence, submissive personality. But really they're finding that the fawn response is difficulty saying no. Setting boundaries are really hard for these types of people, and it could be triggered by some kind of trauma. They tend to be people pleasing. So, for example, I'm always having to walk around eggshells around that person, right? So we're really trying to protect that other person while maybe putting our own mental health at risk. So we're going to look at some examples of the fight, flight, or freeze. So example 1, your child or teen may yell at you for bugging them about taking their driving test when they don't feel ready. So that would be fight. Example 2, your child may call you to pick them up early from a new activity or school because they don't feel comfortable around unfamiliar people. So that'd be flight. And then example 3, a student may feel as though their mind goes blank when the teacher asks you a question, so they freeze up. Again, these are examples of the fight, flight, or freeze response. Even though in these situations aren't really dangerous, we might call that like a false alarm. Okay, so anxiety protects us, but it becomes a problem when, and this is when to kind of pick up if your child is experiencing severe anxiety, that increases in frequency or intensity. So maybe it went from once a week to now once a day to now multiple times a day. You really want to be able to monitor that. When it becomes upsetting and causes you distress. So, if your student or child can't get out of the car, they are, crying at school, they're crying a lot at home, they're refusing to go to school. Again, it would stop you from doing fun and important things, such as school dances, hanging out with friends, getting homework done. And then it goes off with no real or immediate danger. So the example would be like a smoke alarm when, making toast, that there's nothing really there, but the reaction is still intense in nature. We're also going to look at signs of depression in children and teenagers. Just to kind of review these, you might see some persistent sadness or negative mood, not coping with daily activities, withdrawal, changes in sleeping or eating, complaining more about physical problems, trouble concentrating. There's also increased irritability that's not on here, but just really moody, upset. It might look like anger at times, but that's really common in teenagers. That mood shift of they're just always irritable or agitated. That actually could be a sign of depression as well. Again, if these symptoms seem serious and are affecting everyday life, it's time to reach out for help. So if you're concerned about your child or teen, you want to learn the signs and listen. And I really love this quote right here. Pay attention to the worry signs. What parents should do is mostly listen. That should be 90% of the conversation. So instead of trying to jump in and, give advice or problem solve for them, just sit back and listen. And the one thing I want to highlight is that the kids I currently work with right now, the students here, a lot of them say, my mom and dad just don't listen. Mom doesn't listen. Dad doesn't listen. They don't get me. They don't understand. So I think really we might think that we're actively listening, but what does that active listening skill looks like? Does it look like, okay, yeah, I'm on my phone. I'm like, it's okay. I've been there, done that. Or is it like cooking dinner? Is it trying to do laundry? Is it distracted by maybe other children in the home? I really want you to really consider what your active listening skills look like and assess, am I really listening to my child? One of the most important things that you can do is keep those lines of communication open. Ask how they're doing and create a space for them to speak honestly so that you can provide help when needed, and remind them that I'm there. I'm there for you if you need me, but also giving them privacy. And I know this seems counterintuitive when I'm talking about, but teenagers crave privacy. And it's okay for them to maybe talk about a really difficult subject and then need a few minutes to regroup, kind of, be in their room, listening to music, talking to a friend. That is a normal stage of development for a teenager, and we also want to foster that as well. One suggestion, that I also wanted to bring up was, you can spend 10 minutes a day with your, child. And I really encourage that, because by spending those 10 minutes a day with their choice of activity, maybe it's just sitting side by side, maybe it's playing a card game, maybe it's them showing you their artwork or activity they did for the day. But take those 10 minutes, really distraction free, to focus on the child. If they say this is lame, I don't want to do that, just say, okay, well, I would really like to. When you're ready, I'm here. So it doesn't have to be a forced thing, but you really just, again, want to remind them that you're there for them if they need it, if they want it, and that you would really like to connect. We're going to explore when to ask for help. So before assuming that's a mental health problem, I always want to go through, some other factors that you want to eliminate. You want to rule out any medical concerns. So have they received a physical lately? Do they need blood work? Things like that. Healthy habits. So make sure that your child and teen is getting more sleep, eating healthy food, and not being on the screen so much, whether that be TV, their phone, video games. Make sure that you instill some structure so they're not always behind a screen. More calm and quiet when the child's home. So, you can offer quiet time activities. So reading, art, board games, dust off that old Monopoly set and, play a game with your kid. Find out if there's any issues occurring at school or elsewhere that might be causing stress. So this is a really great time to maybe check in with the teacher, the school counselor, just see how they're doing academically and socially. And monitor your mood and behaviors when around your child. So an adult's anger can influence a child without you realizing it. So, the pandemic was super stressful, and, we were all at home, either working from home through Zoom or, just trying to make things work. And I really want to stress that it's important for you to manage your own mood, your own behaviors when you're at home. And so you can effectively, be a positive parent for your own child. We also have a list that's going to be tied to this interventions used at home that goes into some other interventions that might be helpful that will also be added to this slideshow. Warning signs for further intervention. So if you ruled out everything else on the slide before, and then you're now starting to see these symptoms. So for younger children on the left, you're going to see changes in school performance, worry, anxiety, nightmares, disobedience, temper tantrums, harm themselves and others. In children and teens, substance abuse, again, marked decline in school performance, inability to cope with problems. So do they kind of cry at the drop of a hat? Are they becoming easily agitated more so than they have in the past? Intense fear of waking. I really want to highlight that one because there has been a huge increase in girls with body image and poor eating habits. And again, explosive behaviors and then threats to harm themselves or others. So I like for you to do your own check-in at home, check in if you've seen any of those behaviors or symptoms in your child. Does it resonate with what you're seeing? Does it not? Check in with yourself and your family. Mental health referrals. So, the district does offer school-based counseling. And if your child feels that they are in need, or if you feel they're in need of mental health support, you can contact their school counselor, the mental health clinician, who is myself, their teacher, or the school psychologist to discuss further concerns. Depending on their needs, we may or may not be able to provide mental health counseling at school. If we feel the needs are an outside issue, so maybe academically they're doing great, socially they're doing great, but there's a lot of home stuff, we might provide an outside referral. Or if there's not currently any availability amongst our staff, we will also be providing a referral list. These are some more resources. So we have, behavioral health. We have 211, which is a local agency. It's kind of like a 411, but for mental health. Cal Hope is families that are specifically impacted by COVID-19. Know the Signs is a suicide prevention resource. And we also have many others that we just didn't include in these slides, but I'd be happy to go over if anyone wants to reach out. I hope that this was beneficial. I hope this was helpful for everyone. If you have any questions, we will have our contact information. And now we will talk about social media and the impact on our youth. Thank you. Bye-bye.